it's really like rethinking what is mine. Nothing is yours. We are all conduit. Just everything is meant to flow through us. And so if I can teach a widow that through teaching or, Bible studies or discipleship or through, these local groups, I mean, that's it. That is why we're here is not to just keep growing never alone. It's to make them feel empowered to go out and do something else.
I can't wait for you to meet today's guest, Rachel Faulkner Brown. What a gal. She lives in Atlanta, and her story is that she's been widowed twice and now has this thriving ministry called Never Alone. And it's for widows in the States, but now they're doing their first conference in Germany. And her plan and goal with the Lord's blessing is to bring it globally, worldwide, to impact widows around the world. So I know you're going to be so inspired to hear her journey, how she's taken the next step. She's obediently listened to God and done what he's asked her to do. And he just keeps blessing what she's doing. So stay tuned, and thanks for being here. Well, welcome to the Generous Girl podcast. Today, I'm so thrilled to have Rachel Faulkner Brown in the studio. Rachel is a woman who has been widowed twice, and through her pain, suffering, tragedy that God turned around and used to really reach millions around the world, she created the organization called Never Alone Widows. And their heart at Never Alone beats for one thing, and that is seeing widows healed, their lives changed and restored through the love of Jesus and the power of community. So Rachel lives in Atlanta with her beautiful family, and such a powerhouse. I'm just so happy to be able to find some time in your busy day to have this conversation. But, God tells us to take care of widows, and you are doing that so, so well. And you're really living the epitome of a generous life. And that's why you're a perfect guest for the show. So welcome.
Oh my gosh, Kim, thank you so much. I'm so grateful to be here. It's such an honor. Honestly, I love you. I love your work. I love obviously every organization that you work with. It's just amazing to see your hand. You're kind of like, oh, Kim, she's here. And then she's here. And then I was so shocked to see you in Atlanta the other day, which was so fun. So we have many, many mutual friends. So anyway,
yes, we
so
do.
Fun.
That night was so crazy, Rachel. When I flew in, when you get there, you probably know this because you travel so much. But did you know that the airport train, kind of shuts down after 1 a.m.?
Yes,
and so
yes.
It's just, so sporadic. So I get off the plane and it's basically barely running, and I follow the stranger under all the tarmac.
Totally,
from C to B to A.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
It's like a 5K that you didn't sign up for. That's what we call the Atlanta airport.
At 1 a.m. Yes, exactly.
You're like, I'm tired. I need to go to bed. But yeah, it's such an honor to be here. I love what you're doing. I love the podcast. I love the people that you have on. It's so encouraging, really.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, right back at you and your podcast, and already 200 episodes or so. And I know you just also finished your big conference. Why don't we start with that? You've built this organization and 90 chapters around the world or around the States. But talk about the annual conference, because that is a very special event.
Yeah, it is a special event. We had, this was the largest gathering in the U.S. of widows that we have on record. So we had 550 widows that came to Atlanta, and, it's a big undertaking for a really tiny staff. So there aren't very many of us. And so it was, God just met us. We still are we don't even know what we're doing, but it's very, if the world is going to bless anybody at a conference, I want it to be the widow. And so it's lavish. Wow. We give them gifts, and we have great food, and serve them so well. And every table has a host, and they text their leader before, their leader texts them before they get there. So they feel like I have a friend group before I even get here, because widows, we can flake out so easily when we feel like, I don't know anybody. I don't even want to be at a widows conference. I don't want to be a widow. So why am I going to this anyway? So there's a lot of big feelings going on. And so it was amazing. I mean, God, we ended up baptizing 25 widows. They just washed off grief, and they said, we're going to walk into this. We underestimate, let me say that, the power of baptism. I know Baptized California has been a big thing for y'all, and you've seen it, and I feel like Californians get it. But at the end of the day, most churches, they're not utilizing baptism. Priests would baptize themselves when they had new revelations about the word. Well, when you have a new revelation about who you are, and actually that I'm not just a widow, that's what happened to me. I'm a daughter of a king, and I still have a really amazing future ahead of me. My gosh, there's something that changes in you. And then to get messy in the water and come up. I mean, it's so powerful. So those 25 women, but the reality is all 550 women encounter Jesus. And that is really the heart of the ministry, is for widows to encounter Jesus. I can't change anything for them. I can't change their circumstances, but I can introduce them to the King, and I can create an environment that provides encounter experiences for them to encounter Jesus in a way that they may not have in the regular pews of their church. And so it changes everything. So it's just, it was beautiful. I know, you got to come.
I know. I've heard such great things about it. One of my friends thought of a widow like 2 weeks before your event, brought her. She loved it. What do you do intentionally during the conference to help the woman see, yes, you lost your husband. Maybe it was sudden. Maybe it was a drawn out cancer battle where you had a little forewarning. But what do you do to help them see that they're still here, they have a purpose, and it just because they're a widow doesn't mean now that life is over, but God has something huge for them to do. It's going to be different for every person, but I'm sure that's a real part of your conference, of helping to kind of empower, equip the women. What do you do to do that?
Yeah, we do that from the beginning, actually. Like the moment that they sit down, the first thing that they do is we have a story card, and they write down these answers to a set of very curated questions. One of them is, what does my relationship with God look like on the other side of widowhood? And then the other one is, if I could leave anything behind at this conference, what would it be? So what we are asking them to do is tell the truth. And that is it seems like, oh, well, duh, everybody tells the truth. It's like, they don't. Widows lie to themselves every day. Like, you're busy, you're overwhelmed, and you just tell yourself lies day in and day out about who God is, because it almost makes it easier. If I make him kind of the bad guy, then I can just move on. Or if I just feel like he forgot me, that it's just all these things that happen in our hearts. And so when you identify those things, what I'm believing about God, what I want to leave behind, you have to get real with yourself, and you have to be vulnerable with 8 other people. And so the sound of our own voice outside the person of Jesus, the sound of your own voice is the most healing thing. It's better than any over-the-counter supplement. It's better than any shot you can take. It is literally, the sound of your own voice is the most healing thing to your bones and your body. And that is like scientifically proven. It's why what we speak, and it's how Jesus, how God created, how he created something out of nothing. Like, you're creating every word you speak, you're creating. And so those words are so powerful. They are declaring, I don't want to go home with that. And so they do. And so that is a self-fulfilling prophecy by the end of the weekend. And then we come back around to it. So from the beginning, we are getting them to articulate things that they have not been able to say to other non-widows, right? Because they don't feel known, or they just, their friends feel like they're whining again. And, the reality is that around those tables, they are more known than they are with their best friends Isn't that so crazy?
Because they're with people that share similar journeys and stories and can actually
Yeah.
empathize and relate, I'm sure.
Yeah. And
Mm-hmm.
think how, I mean, not us, Kim, but I mean, most relationships, a lot of times they are fairly surface. You know what I mean? You're just
Mm-hmm.
kind of, you're getting through life and you're talking about, hey, can you get my kid? And where are we going to dinner? And, it's a lot of transactional things, but like those deep, hard
Sure.
questions, like get real with yourself. A lot of times your people around you don't know the answers to those questions.
Right, right. No, that's very, very true. We used to do a big Bible study of women, and we would pray over these tables that God would put the women together. And it was always so remarkable that, like, the women who were the nurses would end up at the table, and
I
these
know.
different things that they had in common, and just that deep dive that happened and the connection from day one. Just like you said, they felt like they knew each other better than people they had
Yeah.
known for a really long time.
Well, no, I was just going to say you've got widows in the room that were 23 to 92. So the age range in that room, and then they're sitting with other, 80-year-olds, 90-year-olds. They're sitting with people who understand them, who want more. They're like, I'm not going to just die and regret, in regret or in sadness. Like I want to keep going and just getting to minister and watching what happened between generations. Anyway, it's awesome. You've got to see it. You got to see it.
I know. I would love to do that. Okay. So a few questions for you, and you can figure out like how you want to tell the story. So I know you're widowed twice. So I want the listeners to hear that's how that happened to lead you to how you started Never Alone. And then also, I know you have a really sweet story about how you got started on your own journey of generosity and the importance of giving and being obedient to what God has called you to do with the resources He's entrusted you with. So, however you would like to share those two aspects would be fabulous.
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, my story, I married my college sweetheart and we were, happily married for almost 4 years. And he had a massive aneurysm in my best friend's driveway. He fell back on the concrete. His heart stopped because the spinal cord was severed. And I was left widowed at 23. And to say I was dumbfounded, I mean, that is just an understatement. Todd was a cross country runner in college. He was the picture of health. He'd run the day before. Even when it happened, there was just no way in my mind. This was nothing other than just, he broke his ankle or, even when she told me, I think Todd's been hurt. I think he broke his leg. That was what my best friend said. So I go over there thinking it's an ankle and never saw him again outside the gurney. And I remember looking down and seeing his basketball shoes still on as I laid myself over his body and just thought, how is this my reality? Every widow feels that, when you're laying in the ER and you're in shock, obviously. They came out and said all the things. And then I remarried 2 years later to a fighter pilot friend, friend of the family. Both of my in-laws were best friends. And so it was just, I was like, God set me up. This is amazing. This is my Boaz, my redemption story. He is just the kinsman redeemer of my life. That was Blair. And he was a fighter pilot, in the Air Force and lived just this big life, had these encounters with God that I was just fascinated by. He'd flown around a traveling pastor and just really gotten exposed to things that I was just fascinated by about the spiritual realm. And I was just, very unversed in all of that. And so he was funny and amazing. And we had 2 kids together. And he went to fly on in 2008. So it was about 18 years ago this April. And the cable in the wing, he and his student pilot took off. The cable in the wing broke, and he and his student were killed immediately upon takeoff. And I had a 2-year-old and a 5-month-old this time. And, when they came and told me, Colonel Gerber said, Rachel, Blair and his student pilot been killed on the runway today at 12:30. He said, the United States Air Force and this country are going to take care of you and your little children. And I said to him, I knew why you were here. I've done this before. And when I walked back to my house, Kim, that day, I can't truly articulate it, but it was like my brain got rewired. And it was as if I knew there was something bigger. I was like, there's no way I would have just lost two husbands if there. And I thought that it was
chances,
Blair.
Right.
Yeah. What are the chances? I mean, like we joked about this. Like I've already suffered for Jesus. I kind of get like the past, the rest of my life. I've done the hardest thing that, the hardest thing you can do is bury a spouse. I've done that. I checked the box. I get to move on with my life and, be a good Christian or whatever. And that was just not my reality. And I was like, oh my gosh, what is happening? And I thought it was for Blair's funeral. I really thought, okay, lots of people will meet Jesus at Blair's funeral, but it was like, it was bigger. It was like, there's just something bigger in me. But of course, the Lord's not going to show you the way, right? I mean, he's just like, here's a breadcrumb. Right. And I didn't know, I didn't really know the story of Joseph, but I mean, of course I knew the story of Joseph, but I didn't really know the scripture, Genesis 50:20. And it said, what you intended for harm, God intended for good in the saving of many lives. And Joseph went on to say, fear not, I will take care of you and your little children. And it was, I learned that verse later, but I think for me, that was really what was happening. It was like the enemy was trying to take me out. He, I really believe that death, especially at a young age, is just part of the fall, I mean, it just shouldn't happen, right? We should live to long life. And so, so the enemy was like, I'm going to take out you and these two kids and I'm going to, blow this testimony.
I love you. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I'm just going to give, she's going to be depressed and there's no way she can overcome that. And I was like, you messed with the wrong girl. But I did it from a place, Kim, of unhealth. I wasn't emotionally healthy. I was just very still religious. I was like, okay, let me just start a Bible study 2 weeks after Blair died so I can learn more and I can fight against
grieve or anything.
Oh, I didn't grieve. No, I was like, onward, Christian soldier. I will carry the banner of hope for Jesus. And genuinely, that was my thought. I was like, I am your hope bringer and I will bring more hope than the law allows. And I did it from just this place of total unhealedness. I had a secret. I'd been abused, all of that to say, I let go of the secret. I really found myself through death. And that sounds so crazy, but I found out who I was always meant to be. And so I always say when I get to heaven, I'm going to introduce myself to Todd and Blair because they didn't know me. They did not. They really didn't. Funny. Yeah. Oh my God. Totally.
Really
I mean, funny. I'm still that same girl in a lot of ways, but one funny money story about when Blair passed away is we were big Dave Ramsey people. And we had envelopes, I mean, we lived by the envelopes and I would rob this envelope to pay this envelope. And it was always so annoying, And I think the day Blair died, maybe the day after, I was like, I'm done with envelopes. I'm in charge. I mean, bye. I was like, no more envelopes. I'm done with that. And Mama is in charge. And, I think at the end of the day, it prepared me and I was very averse to debt and all the things. I mean, thank you, Lord, for Dave Ramsey. But at the end of the day, yeah, I mean, I had some really big decisions to make at that point. Raising two kids, what would their future look like? Are they going to have a future? Will we have enough money? Will we run out of money? I mean, every widow, I think I've told you this before, but our biggest fears are, am I going to die and leave my children orphaned? Something going to happen to me? And our kids have the same fear. And am I going to run out of money doing it? And so, those two were very much my fears as well, even though I had plenty and there were, as I call it, mailbox money from the government. I mean, I was getting Blair's retirement, but you still are just like, will it be enough? When you lose a husband's income, you lose, so much. And I remarried 6 years later. And so I've been remarried for 13 years to Rod, which is what brought us to Atlanta. And anyway, it's a crazy story. I would not be a ministry leader if it hadn't have been for Rod, if I hadn't have let go of my secret, if I hadn't have done the work and done the healing. And death was the catalyst to finding my life.
That's amazing, Rachel. And, the book, The Velveteen Rabbit, I love that book about how the more the little child is loving that rabbit, the more it just gets worn down, and but it really becomes the real rabbit that it always was. And I think life is that way when we allow us, as you just said, to do the hard work, to not push things aside or hide them in the corner and not, quote, deal with them. I think God, nothing surprises him. Everything that has happened to us and will happen to us, he's fully aware. And the more we're able to bring all of that into the light and get the professional help we need, the pastoral help, counseling, whatever it is that we need, friendships to, bring that healing, to then be that best version of ourselves that we were always meant to be. I mean, it's a journey, but we do have some power over it, like Warren always says, when the things happen, do we allow that event to make us bitter, or do we allow that event to make us better? And what is our choice in that at the time? And so, okay, let's talk about the generosity story you and I talked about before we started the recording. And then I love how that plays into this as well, and how you started Never Alone.
Yeah, totally. So I started a ministry called Be Still Ministries when I married Rod. I went to a little house and a woman prayed for me. And I'd never had that kind of prayer. I'd, been on prayer lists and, hey, I'm going to pray for you right now, that kind. But this was prophetic prayer, and I'd never experienced that. And she said, in this meeting, all these people, two other people in the room knew my story. She did not. And she starts praying. She calls my name and she says, Rachel Brown. She was like, I see a crocus coming up out of a winter snow, and your life has been so hard. And when I say, oh my gosh, I was like, God knows this has been hard. And Rod, my third husband, was depressed, and I was just kind of like, can I push the eject button myself? I mean, can we just like pretend like this didn't happen? I was like, okay, I buried two husbands. I did not sign up for a sick third husband. Nobody signs up. Nobody wants to be depressed, but I was just mad. I was so angry. I was like, oh my gosh, is this going to be my future? And so she says that, and it was like the Lord whispered to my soul, actually yelled it. I started like dry heave crying, but he whispered to me, Rachel, I see you. I have seen all these hard days. And honestly, I think I was so busy trying to make him famous that I didn't really feel seen. I didn't allow myself to grieve. And so I really, that anger phase of grief, it's a real phase. And I didn't really go through it the first time, but I did. The third husband, unfortunately, I went through the anger phase married to my third husband, which about, took us both out. But at the end of the day, this prayer unlocked something in me that allowed the love of the Father to come in, because when you feel seen, you feel loved. And you can go down, but if you feel invisible, which is why Widows Ministry is just so important to me. So anyway, out of that, I was like, I want women to start sharing their stories. So I went and bought 50 chairs from IKEA, started this ministry. And the first year of giving, this one donor who we both know, dear friend of ours, Julie, she gave the first $10,000 to seed the ministry. And that was so outrageous to me. I was like, oh my gosh, like who gives $10,000 just to somebody they barely know, And I was like, Lord, but I had heard the Lord say when I started the ministry, he was like, the first 10,000 I want you to give away. Well, the IRS, you can't do that, but I didn't know that rule. And I was so innocent in doing it. But I was just radical obedience. And I was like, okay, 5,000 to this worship leader. And he told me exactly who to give it to, and another 5,000 to this worship leader. They both one ended up making an album with her 5,000, which blessed millions of people and still does. And then the other one is still my worship leader to this day with Never Alone. I mean, I don't go anywhere if she's not going, really. I mean, that's how I feel about her. So and it's not because I gave her 5,000. It's because of God. She didn't even lead worship really, but once or twice for me at that point. But I just knew the need, there was a need, and God was going to meet the need through this gift. And I honestly think, Kim, that it's why he has entrusted the resources that he's entrusted to me, to Never Alone, to our family, because he's like, I can trust her, and it's bigger than just that one story. But I think if I had not have given away that first 10,000, I don't think even Be Still, I don't think Never Alone would be what it is today. There's just no doubt. And I think the other piece of generosity, Kim, is I started Be Still, and then Never Alone Widows was the outreach ministry of Be Still. And the Lord invited me into a bigger story. He was like, hey, I'm going to ask you to give this away to the leaders that you already have. And we're going to give them a 501c3. We're going to multiply, and you're just going to lead Never Alone. And it's an amazing story that I don't have time probably to tell you right now. But
sure.
But when you found a ministry, giving it up is very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
But I was like,
totally.
I was like, I'm not supposed to lead two. These women are fully equipped. They're still going. They're expanding. Be Still Gatherings is what it's called now. And so I'm like, what God did with one became 5. And then what he's done with Never Alone has become so much more than I ever dreamed it would ever be. We just did one little retreat. I was like, one little retreat, and then we're done. And then, here we are 38 retreats later, 5 conferences, wow. 90 groups. I mean, it's just, he is a God of multiplication, but he will ask you to release things to multiply things.
So how do you keep the women involved then? Like, they can obviously go to this national conference, and then they can join a local chapter. So is that a monthly event, or how often do they meet? And how do you cultivate community outside of the conference?
Yeah. So we have monthly events with our Never Alone groups. So those 90 groups in different cities across the country. And then we have online chapters. So we have 4 online chapters for anyone who's not in one of those cities. And of course, we want more women to step up and say, I want to plant. I taught on planting in a famine at this past conference. And, planting in a famine is when, hey, I'm not in Egypt with all the resources and all the things, but I'm going to put some seed in the ground so that God can water it. And I'm going to trust that the laws of harvest are for me too. And so that is what we're asking widows to do all across this country. Now we're going to be in Germany as well. So our first international group. Wow. But God, I think at the end of the day, the way that we keep them in communities, we're discipling a nation of widows. That is our goal. Like, it's not just to be in community. It's bigger than that. Like, we want you to move forward and then go love on others, and do what Nicole has done. Nicole came to our retreat, and then she came home. She starts a local, and then she's like, there's still more need. So I'm going to go start a ministry, because we can't do it all. I mean, that's how the kingdom works. Right, it's like, hey, we want to raise up leaders who have ideas, who go, and I want a nation of widows who are the most generous widows in this country. Because when you see a widow, it is so counterintuitive to watch a widow be generous, because she should be protecting and hoarding and making sure she has enough. But to see her give her life, her time, her talent, her treasures, and it starts with your money. I mean, it really does. Like, do you really believe that he's the provider? And I was on the phone with Heath Hill today of Lime Media, and Heath was like, the fact that we believe, it's tithing, blah, 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 all that, whatever. But the fact that we will tip a server, a person that we don't know who's bringing us food, it's amazing. Yes, you're going to tip them 20%. The fact that we think it's acceptable to tip someone 20% at dinner, and we think the God of the universe, who created everything for us, that it's only enough to give him 10%. He was like, what? Like, what? So it's really like rethinking, what is mine? Nothing is yours. We are all conduit. Just everything is meant to flow through us. And so if I can teach a widow that through teaching, or, Bible studies, or discipleship, or through, these local groups, I mean, that's it. That is why we're here, is not to just keep growing Never Alone. It's to make them feel empowered to go out and do something else.
Right. No, wonderful. I mean, okay, a couple of things. One is, you mentioned Nicole. So Nicole is connected, for the listener, with Healing at the Well, and that's a ministry for widows in San Clemente, California. Like Rachel said, a local chapter. A cool story is Nicole and Darcy were on my podcast a number of sessions ago. So if you scroll back and look for the 2 gals, you'll find them. then there's another gal that listened to Generous Girl, and her name's Linda Mandryer. She has a ministry for widows in India called the White Rainbow Project. So they got connected. Linda spoke at their event, and now Linda's doing a beach walk in San Clemente on, I believe it's Tuesday, June 23rd. And 30 widows from Nicole and Darcy's group are going to be participating in that walk. So the generosity of like raising funds and the physical, part of the challenge of doing that. I love that because it is giving the time, the talents, the treasures. And I heard this one individual in his 80s say, for all of us to be here on this earth and to be as equipped and available for the Lord as possible, we get up in the morning, we pray for, spiritual battle, give us the strength and the helmet of salvation, breastplate of righteousness, all the things. Mm-hmm. But he said there's two things that can trip us up from not like kind of being just left on the sidelines. And it's really hard for God to use us because one is lack of forgiveness. So if we harbor the unforgiveness in our heart toward God, toward others, then it's kind of just like it's clogged, it like
stops the flow.
It stops the flow. Mm-hmm. And then the other side of that coin of the part where the flow is also stopped is the generosity. When we're not generous with our time, our talents, our treasures, it's, none of it's ours. The relationships we have, the wealth we have, the time we have, it's all a gift. So I just love those two things side by side because I do think the person that is fully forgiven all the hard things, people in their life, and then freely giving of their time, talents, treasures, God can use them in ways that you can't even imagine. And obviously for a widow, I'm sure it feels just like this was not the plan. This was not, you're especially like as you're getting older, you plan on retirement and the kids are launched and you're going to have this time and then boom, it's gone. But, and yet, of course, God has a plan. And of course, he's still got you here for a purpose, and a huge purpose. And so to not believe the lies of the enemy that, those best days are behind you, or to believe that you're invisible. You're not invisible. God sees you and this community sees you as well. And there's a real reason why you're here.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah. And I love that you said your best days are behind you, because one of the things that I say to widows when I meet with them for the first time is, I want you to look at me in the eye and I want you to hear me say to you, your best days are ahead. And they do not believe it. And it makes them cry and it makes them kind of sad and sometimes mad at me. But the reality is if you let God do what only he can do, that is true. That is true. You don't have to let God do that. I mean, you can totally stay stuck and, you have, there is a choice. There is a choice as a widow to identify more with widow than daughter of a king. And so who do you identify more with? The widow title, that identity, which says, sometimes lack, needy, poor, whatever, poverty spirit, all those things. Or do you want to identify with the daughter, which is who you really are?
Right. Exactly. Oh, so good. So great, Rachel. Well, I know we're almost at time. So I want to hear your, Bible verse and book and bargain. But last question for you would be like, if you had all the resources in the world to build this ministry, like what would you love to see happen, say in the next 5-10 years?
Yeah. Well,
like
I'd love, obviously. Yeah. I think it would become a ministry of, really deep discipleship. So creating obviously more resources to continue that. And then I definitely think globally, I would love to take teams of widows here who are healed and whole and walking in their destiny and go love on widows around the world. We've done that once in Poland. We did a conference for 200 Ukrainian widows. And I mean, it was unbelievable. When you go national and you see like, wow, we are so blessed, one. And then just what we can offer them, the model that we've created, it transcends any language barrier that there is, because Holy Spirit is every language, right? I mean, he can move in any language. And so, I think globally, and then, groups in every city, larger conferences. I would love to fill stadiums of widows. But to do it the way we do it, we have a very specific model that we're not going to compromise on, and the lavishness of it. Like, I just want to love them and not just try and get 1,000 people in the room. I want to love them individually and beautifully right there. So anyway, just trying to stay in that place of what can only we do, and not lose myself to the kingdom, honestly, like not to lose, what my family, or, I don't want to be a slave to, I hate to say it, I don't want to be a slave to ministry. I want to maintain that balance of my family and my husband and my marriage, while still being able to do really amazing work. And so, yes, there's a lot of things I would do. Hire more people right now would be, that would be the one thing to do the work, I can tell you. But yeah, it's amazing. And yeah, so exciting what God has for us.
Wow. I'm so proud of you. You're such an inspiration. There's one gal I follow on Instagram, and I think her handle is Spilled Milk Mama, and she became a widow just like you at those little ages. And to watch her transformation, and she's been very upfront about her own journey and healing. And I think we need each other to do that. And you provide that community, but like you said, it's more than that. You're wanting to then have each person be taking the next step and loving others, and then feeling the sense of, okay, this is why I'm here. This is what God has always had in mind for me to do. So God bless you. You're such an encouragement. So I can't wait to watch, in 5 years, to see all around the world where Never Alone exists. So.
Oh, me too. So exciting. So exciting.
Okay. So your favorite Bible verse, what would that be?
Well, it's definitely Genesis 50:20. I mentioned it earlier, but that verse is just a life verse for me. What you intended for harm, God intended for good, and saving of many lives. And I will never not believe that the Lord knew my story and knew where I would be and knew I would need that verse.
That's beautiful. Love that. Kurt, any book you're reading you want to recommend?
Well, I just ordered the book 2 Chairs. It's about hearing the Holy Spirit, and then the other book is my friend Courtney Pray's book, and she got up. I've actually got it right here, and she's a good friend of ours. She speaks with us, and so I'm currently reading her book as well. It's her story, and I met her about 6 months after her husband passed away. But it's about Mark 9, and it's just beautiful, a beautiful book of encouragement for. It's not just about grief and loss. It's really about how we all have a choice to get up or not, right? And Jesus, had said Talitha Kum, and he meant it for all of us. Like, we can't just lay flat when he's breathed resurrection into our bones, into our life. And we're about to experience Easter, and I'm just like, God, we were just meant for resurrection. We're just resurrection people. We don't stay in the grave. And so, one of my favorite verses is Romans 8:17. Also in the Passion, it says, you were meant to live an adventurously expectant life, not a grave tending life. And that's, what I'm trying to eradicate is grave tending for widows. Like, not our goal, adventurously expectant,
I love that. Okay. And for the person who's listening and not on YouTube, what is the title of that book by Courtney Pray?
Oh, and she got up. She got up.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah. It's amazing.
Okay. And your bargain.
My bargain. Well, I'm a Goodwill shopper, Kim. So every day.
I am too. Love it.
Every day is a treasure hunt when I go to Goodwill. But I will say, I wore a dress on Saturday night. I had to speak at a gala up in Detroit, and I wore a dress. This is so egregious, but I paid $10 for this Kay Unger dress. And I got it at this store called Dirt Cheap 28 years ago when I was in college. And I am still wearing that dress. It's stretchy, so I can still wear it. And I'm like, that was the best $10 I have ever spent. I'm still toting that thing.
It still fits you and from college. That's amazing.
Well, like I said, it's stretchy. It is stretchy. So anyway, so fun. But yeah,
well,
definitely the bargain.
Thank you for being on this show. You're just so great, Rachel. I'd love to talk with you. Love to hear your story. And I know you bless so many people. So my prayer is that for all the listeners out there hearing your story, they will be blessed and they'll take the next step, whether they're a widow or whether they're single, married, wherever they're at. Just that they'll live that expectant, adventurous life that you so well exemplify. So thank you. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for joining us today on the Generous Girl podcast. We're so glad that you're here. And if you know of someone that you think needs to be a guest on this podcast, please reach out to us. New episodes are released every other week, and you can follow us on YouTube and on all platforms. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you next time.